back to another episode of The Only Playbook. I am your host, Sweetcar. I got a full house with me, Shishot and Shovit. The draft is over. We spent months and months speculating, and now we have results. So we can actually break down whose drafts we are excited about, whose drafts we think, really, really shit the bed, and some of the intriguing ones. So, Shishot, I'll kick it off with you. How are you feeling post-draft about the Viking situation and just kind of how the draft unfolded as a whole?
Honestly, very ecstatic. There's so many good teams now, so many good offensive teams. Like we're looking at, fantasy football wise, Caleb Williams going around like 11th, 12th, which is outlandish to me, like knowing how stacked his team is. But that just tells you how good the offensive side of the game has become now from this draft.
What about you, Shovit?
I'm great. I don't want to give any spoilers away because the Steelers are one of the teams I will be talking about. But as a Steeler fan, I feel pretty freaking great. And you guys will hear all about it soon enough.
Awesome. So without further ado, let's kick it off. I will start us off, guys, with my biggest loser of the draft. Probably pretty obvious. I tried to give myself more of a time to let this sit and marinate to see if, what other perspective there may be. But for me, the clear-cut loser with just the way they operated the draft is the Atlanta Falcons. You go out and you sign Kirk Cousins to a guaranteed deal. He's going to be your quarterback at least for the next 2 years. And you draft with the 8th overall pick, not just a quarterback, but one of the oldest quarterbacks, the most pro-ready quarterback, the quarterback with the most injury history for a franchise, again, that just paid top of the market dollar to a 35, 36-year-old quarterback. So even if I'm looking at this from a perspective of they're doing what the Packers did, they're doing what the Vikings never could do, is build life after, you could have done that later. You did not have to do that with the 8th overall pick. You're in a win now window. That's why you signed Kirk Cousins. So why are you getting a player 8th overall that can contribute zero to that window while Kirk Cousins is there? It makes really, really no sense to me at all. I just think from there, it went completely downhill. Second round, they took defensive lineman Rook Ororo. And what's crazy is they took him 35th overall, and the guy sitting on the board that they could have ironically taken at 8th overall, and I wouldn't have found it as a reach, is Jerzon Newton. Defensive lineman Johnny Newton was on the board, and they reached all the way down to take Rook Ororo. Makes no sense to me, right? So massive reach there. And then you look at edge, Braylon Trice, 74th overall. Nice. They finally addressed the edge position, the defensive line, like I thought they should have addressed at 8th overall. But Trice is more of a rotational player. Brandon Dorlus is another defensive lineman that I really do like. So the latter half of their draft, getting J.D. Bertrand, Jace McClellan, Casey Washington, and Zion Loog, all probably rotational players, all probably players that aren't really going to contribute to this win now window. So the peak position, the 8th overall spot, is where you could have drafted a guy to plug and play right now to help this team in a really, really bad division. They should easily win the division. The NFC was deemed weak, although after this draft, we may have to rethink things. But again, I just thought a really, really missed opportunity. Could have traded back, honestly, if they really liked Penix, really gauge what the market for him was and see if you could get him like second half of the first round. But I just felt like that was such a miss. And again, to pair it off, you have a guy sitting in your lap at 35th overall, and you reach for a guy who's like 90th on the consensus board. So I was not happy with the Atlanta Falcons. You could see it in the video with the general manager having to explain the 8th overall pick to the owner. It was basically like another version of the meme with the guy at the clubs whispering in that girl's ear, and every quote is like some stupid football thing that the girl gives no shits about. Kind of like that, where the general manager or the owner was like, what are you talking about? We're trying to win, and you got a quarterback that can't play for at least 2 years. So massive L for me to the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of PTSD setting in for them because you know how they didn't prepare after Matt Ryan and they just went into shambles, had to get rid of her and all this stuff. I think it's a little bit of that playing a role in why they did what they did, but it's foolish. It's dumb. They could have been contenders. They're not contenders as of this moment. The only thing I can rationalize is the weak division and, just preparing for the future. That's the only thing that makes sense. But even then, it's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
Yeah. If Michael Penix is who they think that they drafted, then maybe it works out for them because they don't think that Kirk Cousins can win them a Super Bowl. So it's life after Kirk. He gets another Achilles or some sort of injury. But it really I take it as just bad mismanagement, right? Like maybe you wanted to trade down and you couldn't, and then you kind of just took Michael Penix off the board because that was the best quarterback that you thought, or it just doesn't make any sense if you're having a win now mentality. So yeah, I would put them as a loser for that reason as well.
Yeah, I've read so much, and again, I tried to let it marinate to see the other side of this, and it's really hard to. Again, even if you rationalize the fact that he's the quarterback of the future, take the 20-year-old in McCarthy, because even when he sits 3 years, he's still 23 when Kirk retires, right? Penix will be like 26, 27 by the time Kirk's contract is up. So, I mean, what is the situation there? So, really, really unfortunate to me. That's a big L. Shovit, who was your biggest draft loser?
Sure. So my biggest draft loser is going to be the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't think that the Dallas Cowboys had a terrible draft, but when you're comparing it to what they should have established, again, win now mentality, I don't see that from these picks that they did. We know that the Cowboys are good at picking offensive linemen, and they got their tackle Tyler Guyton in the 29th pick, Cooper Beebe, also guard at the 73rd pick. Those are good picks, but one thing I didn't see are good receivers. When they went and got their linebacker Maurice Leafu, they could have gotten Jermaine Burton, they could have gotten Troy Franklin, they could have gotten Roman Wilson, who was still on the board. They didn't do that. And they didn't get any running backs, right? And why that's important is because they didn't get running backs, they went and picked up Zeke Elliott, who had a sort of a comeback year last year, sort of in the latter half of the season. But is that really the guy that you want to go with when you're in a win now? Like that, Dak Prescott's not getting any younger. So for that reason, I just don't think that to be elite, to get to that promised land, that they drafted the right players for that. Maybe this establishes the trenches, which looks like that was the goal. Trenches. That's all we're going to focus on. But I don't think that this pushes the needle to get to a Super Bowl for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I would say the Cowboys are in as much of a win now window as Aaron Rodgers was vaccinated when they asked him about it during the COVID time. Because how can you be in a win now window if you have nothing beyond this year? Now, they didn't extend Dak, right? So clearly after this year, it's not a win now because you don't even know who your quarterback is. Tyler Guyton is a project tackle. He could be really good, but he is not a year one starter. Again, like you said, Shovit, not a win now move. I would say Cooper Beebe, probably the only guy, even in the third round, that you could probably plug and play at guard, but no receiver for the future outside CeeDee Lamb. Cooks is getting older. Like you said, no running back, and they just brought back old man Zeke as opposed to just taking any running back in the 7th round. You could take a flyer. Undrafted guy could probably give you some contributions, but none of that. So again, to me, I don't know who Jerry Jones is trying to fool by saying win now. I mean, every single move they made in the offseason is the opposite of win now. So to me, this seems like, I mean, are you fooling the blind? Because nobody really here is fooled that this is a win now window for them.
Yeah, and they got big contracts. They're going to have to do something about coming up too. So I'm not sure what's going on there. If you guys are ready, I'm going to talk about my loser, the Tennessee Titans. This one's a little debatable, but I got some pretty good reasons why I would consider them losers. Anything below a B-, I consider losing, and I gave them a rating of a C. The plan here is to build around Will Levis, right? And they had one of the most lackluster offensive lines all of last year, ranking 28th and below in pretty much every offensive line category. They went and got Latham, right? So with the 7th overall pick, solid pick, you would think, but there were better offensive linemen available, like Fashanu's still chilling there. I mean, we're going to talk about this later in the year, and we're going to look at this possible 78 overall versus a possible Hall of Famer type of player. So, no knack on him. JC's a solid player, and I think it's going to improve the line immediately just because how bad the line was, but there were better players available. And in the second round, like just overall, one more time, the main focus should have been offensive line throughout this team because that is their biggest weakness. And they got one offensive lineman. That's it. They addressed one. So that's the other part of the part where, if someone doesn't pan out, they're going to have to do this whole thing all over again. And you had the opportunity to do it through the draft, and now you're going to have to pick through the free agency. So, and we all know free agents, as far as offensive linemen go, they're very rare. So it's going to be difficult. In round 2, they got Tavondre Sweat, which, is a solid player. There were some maturity concerns with DUIs and whatnot, which, sure, fine. If you're a good enough player, it's worth taking those kind of risks. But I don't think he's as good of a player as that risk kind of showed up. He's supposed to be a day 3 prospect. There's definitely upside, and it could pay off, but that wasn't one of their biggest needs. Like they were doing pretty okay from a defensive line standpoint. There's some other late intriguing prospects they got, Brownlee, possible cornerback at some point, but it's not going to be this year. And there's just no, and he's not likely to push Tennessee into playoff contention with that move. So a lot of these moves are not changing the dynamics drastically. They're just very small, subtle changes. I think they kind of like panicked with the Sweat pick. It was more of like a risky luxury pick that didn't help Will Levis at all in any way. So their philosophy doesn't add up. Things are weird. And, addressing an iffy, not addressing a solid pass rusher early in a division where you have CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Trevor Lawrence. Like, bro, you're going to have to do better than that. That's a solid C in my book.
Yeah, they've got some good prospects in terms of who they drafted, but I'm with you. I think Tavondre Sweat was going to go like late third round. I think projections based on the DUI, he was off of a lot of teams' draft boards is what I heard as well. So definitely feels like a reach. If I'm them, I would have absolutely doubled up on offensive line because it's Will Levis's make or break year, right? That's why you drafted him as a quarterback. You went out and signed Calvin Ridley. So help that offense more. Defensive line, Tavondre Sweat's a big man. So he is going to play that, 3 technique probably, or that nose tackle. But as far as impact goes, not great. Gray and Brownlee are 2 players that I liked as well. But like you said, really not day one starters. I would have loved to see another weapon for them. I think they, they picked up somebody.
Jaquan Jackson.
Was it Jaquan Jackson, the receiver? Yeah, I thought they signed a undrafted free agent running back. My mind is drawing a blank because he's supposed to pair with the 2 guys, but I can't think of who it is right now. But nonetheless, you're right. I'm with you. I do feel like Latham's climb was very last minute too. I was watching the draft boards and watching the betting lines, and for the longest time, Latham was like a late first pick, right. And then draft day, all of a sudden they were mocking him 5th to the Chargers before Joe Alt. So I don't know where that meteoric rise came from. I always have questions when players have already finished playing football, the season has ended, and all of a sudden, based on nothing, they're climbing draft boards. So that's always a fear. But I agree with you. I didn't necessarily like the Titans draft as much as I would have expected to. But go ahead.
Tony Pollard was the guy that you were thinking.
No. So they did sign Tony Pollard. They signed Tony Pollard, and they have Spears, but they just picked up a 3rd guy. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. It's fine. Go ahead with whose draft were you most intrigued by?
Me? Yeah. So for me, the most intriguing aspect of this whole draft was how the Chargers kind of dissected all of it. A lot of people were thinking they were going to trade down, and they could have easily done that, racked up a bunch of picks, but this kind of worked out really well for the Chargers. Joe Alt, his dad was a Pro Bowler. I mean, there's really low chance that this guy's not going to be who we think he's going to be. He's going to jump right in. He's going to improve this offensive line immediately. They already have Rashawn Slater playing left tackle as a Pro Bowler already. And that's usually where Joe Alt plays, but they're talking about moving him to the right tackle. So we'll see how that change works. But if he's versatile enough to get drafted this early, to not even play the position he's used to be playing, this man's got some serious longevity coming his way, looking at his history and everything. That's a solid pick, smash pick. Protect your number 1 asset, protect your best player, and that's what they chose to do. Now, going into the 2nd round, they picked up Ladd McConkey. The first receiver I even remember dissecting back in January was, before all this talk about this guy, that guy, just watching this guy's highlights, just watching McConkey, I was like, yo, you guys looked at this guy yet? Because that guy stood out more than anybody else, just because the intelligence is there. He was a finalist for the William V. Campbell Trophy, which is the academic Heisman. So it's like for the high IQ football players. So he won that. But my knock on this situation is he only played 9 games last year and only started in 1 of those games. Ended up with 30 catches for 478 yards and 2 touchdowns. So not much, but he had back issues and he hurt his ankle late into the season. Sounds like that's not going to impact him long, but it is the NFL. And, now we're playing with the big boys. So as far as the injury risk goes, they did kind of passed up on some of the other players in order to get him. We'll see how that plays for them. But this is about as solid of a receiving pick as you can get, because this man is talented on every level, and they needed a wide receiver, right? So solid pick. Next up, they went with Junior Colson, linebacker from where? From Michigan. So he's now going to get to play with his old coach. What more trust can you get than your own coach going to the NFL and saying, hey, I want him here? He led Michigan with 95 tackles, and there's strong projections that he's going to lead the NFL as far as rookies go in tackles as well. So he's going to come right there and replace Kendricks and replace Kenneth Murray, and nothing's going to change. It's only going to get better. So solid 3 picks to start off. And then they got Justin Ebogibi. I don't really know how to pronounce that. Nigerian.
Ebubike, probably something like that. Yeah.
But he's a defensive tackle. It was a need. They went ahead addressed that right away. They lost Sebastian Joseph Day last year. So there was a lot of nobodies, and this guy's coming in from Alabama. We know Alabama guys could have some sort of oomph about them. Hopefully this changes everything. He did have a neck injury in the past, but 7 sacks in 14 games. Solid amplification of what has already not been doing so well for the Chargers. And then they went back-to-back cornerbacks, right? Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, they're addressing their needs immediately. They went Tarheeb Still, cornerback, fits perfectly for the Chargers wanting playmakers, because their whole secondary is filled with playmakers. I don't know if they're all going to be good, but, gets to learn from Asante Samuel Jr., going to help the secondary immediately. And we've known for some time the Chargers have been struggling significantly from a secondary standpoint. And then they doubled down and got Cam Hart, another cornerback. 6'3" corners, worth it. Take that risk, see what happens. He's not going to be starting day one, but 6'3" corner, I'm willing to work behind him. And then they got a bunch of people, Kamani Vidal. He's the nephew of Hank Aaron. So, I mean, like, that alone is enough information to be like, maybe that's enough to say, let's take a risk. So they addressed that. He's a running back, had 3 games of 200 yards, kind of worth trying it out. And we know what Harbaugh does with running backs, so that could work out pretty well. He's going to have to share with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, but this trio is now looking like a pretty solid trio to start off. And then they went with Brendan Rice. They're going for talent from a legacy standpoint. So they went with, Hank Aaron's nephew. Then now they're going with Jerry Rice's son. So they see some things that other teams may not be seeing. And I think it's worth to try this late into the draft. And then they doubled down again and got another receiver because they lost Keenan Allen and Williams. So now they're like, you know what, let's address all of our weaknesses and let's see if we can compete in this division, because they're going to have to. So I think overall, I give this an A solid A draft. They addressed everything you need, improved in every aspect of the game. I don't know what more you can ask for.
Cornelius Johnson, also another Michigan native too. So Harbaugh gets another Michigan man at receiver. But yeah, I would say Cam Hart's one of my favorite players in this draft. Massive physical cornerback. If not for the injury concerns at Notre Dame, probably would have been a day 2 guy. So somebody I was hoping the Vikings would get. So absolute steal for the Chargers.
Yeah. I think the Chargers kind of shaped all of what first round happened, right? Getting Joe Alt and not trading with the Vikings, I'm sure the Titans, we'd be talking about them as potential winners, or, even mediocre, if they had the opportunity to get Joe Alt, which I would think was the number 1 tackle for them to pick. So that just shaped up everything for the rest of the draft. All right. I think that brings it to me. My intriguing pick were the Broncos, the Denver Broncos, who had an interesting draft. Okay, so a lot of quarterbacks went in the first round, and quarterbacks that we thought were going to be late first rounders. Bo Nix goes 12th for the Broncos, and then they get Jonah Ellis, edge from Utah, who is an elite edge rusher, nasty spin move, has a lot of Von Miller vibes, measured very similar to Von Miller during the combine as well. He had 37 tackles, 12 sacks, 1 forced fumble last year. So all great numbers. He's explosive, has great upside. So I like that pick as well. And then they get Troy Franklin, wide receiver from Oregon, at the 102nd pick, which I think he can be a wide receiver 1 for them. He's got good speed, comes out of the break really well. Got some yak abilities as well. We like that. It makes good adjustments. So these top 3 picks to me are, I won't say they're really good. They're intriguing because of that Bo Nix factor right there, right? Bo Nix has put in stats. Okay, he's got the stats. You may say that, you may not like his, fundamentals, or he's just not as accurate, but he has put up numbers in Oregon. And so if they can develop him and make him that number 1 quarterback for the Broncos, I think you have an interesting team here. The rest of the picks, Chris Abrams-Drain, cornerback, Audric Estime, running back, those are all, I'm sure, not starters. You're going to develop them. So, based on needs right there. But just the top 3 picks itself, there's a lot of potential there, and sky's the limit if you can turn these players into your superstars. So I like what the Broncos did. We'll see if it works for them.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from the Denver Broncos draft is Jaleel McLaughlin season was way more this year than it is last year, because Bo Nix is the dump off king. His average yards per throw in college was like the lowest possible, right? So if we want dump offs, Jaleel McLaughlin season is officially upon us. So intriguing draft to say the least.
Yeah. I do want to add one thing. People commend on his accuracy so much, but one thing that stood out to me was the yards per attempt. And it's like, less than what is it, like 6 points?
It's really bad. It's less than 6 or it's like less than 7
it's
for
very
sure.
little, and it's because of the dump offs. So I mean, if it works with the program, it works with the program, right? All we need is what's it called? What's the old saying when it comes to quarterback? System quarterback. But as long as you fit the system, I guess it can work out.
Yeah, I'm just rubbed a little wrong from Sean Payton, obviously from the past, but also the fact that he had the audacity to say that they were like finessing the Vikings and leading us to believe. Bro, in no world were the Minnesota Vikings taking Bo Nix, bro. No. He is all yours. He is your nightmare and your problem. My most intriguing draft, guys, was the New England Patriots. I already said this on, I think, 2 episodes ago. My most intriguing pick was Keon Coleman. But for me, the intrigue is all here, man, because to me, they have the biggest boom potential or the biggest bust potential. This could all fall apart within 2 years. Did you guys watch the post interviews of Keon Coleman after he came into the building? The dude's got
so funny.
Such a personality, bro. Yeah. Such a personality. If he ends up actually being a good football player, I mean, he's got superstar written all over him just from his personality alone. But for them taking Drake May 3rd overall, we already know that. To me, he's a better prospect than Jaden Daniels. So that's already value enough, because for the entirety of the draft before Daniels won the Heisman, Drake May was going to be the second quarterback off the board. There was debate that he could be the number 1 quarterback off the board. So to me, that's already value. So I'm very intrigued about that. We talked about the fact that they didn't have a situation for a quarterback to go into because their receivers were Juju Smith-Schuster. KJ Osborne is who they signed this offseason. So if I'm looking at the New England Patriots depth chart, Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, KJ Osborne, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jalen Reagor, and Tyquan Thornton. So go ahead if you guys want to pick a name out of a hat. Who is going to be the leading receiver for that team? It's going to be none of those guys. It's going to be Jalen Polk, who they drafted at 37th overall, because this guy is a possession machine. Drake May is going to need somebody to be able to get open consistently and win. And Jalen Polk does all of that. Nothing flashy, but he just knows how to get open. To me, he is like another Roman Wilson, if you will. Great route runner, knows how to find the space in the zone. He was overshadowed by Adunze, obviously, at Washington, but he is no slouch himself. So to me, that is intriguing. But not only that, they doubled up on receiver at 1-0 in the 4th round with Javon Baker, who was one of my favorite receivers in all of the draft. Undersized guy, but an absolute twitchy monster. I think they can get him the football every which way. And I think God damn it, I should have written this down. He said he has a very, very polarizing quote that came out. No, hold on. Gosh.
Just come to the home stadium and bring y'all popcorn.
Yeah, something like that. He was very, very intriguing. Another guy with a huge personality, and he really showcases it the way he plays football. So love that pick for them as well. Those 2 guys could come in and literally be wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 for that team, because every other receiver on their depth chart is kind of not really impressed, bro. So to me, those 2 guys are incredibly awesome. 2 other guys that are so intriguing to me. Joe Milton, they took as their second to last pick. Guy has an absolute bazooka, threw the football the absolute fastest, 62 miles per hour at the combine. There were talks about him switching to tight end. It's a situation where they could get crazy. They could get a little funky. He could be the Black Taysom Hill if they want him to be. He could be a better Taysom Hill. So there's a lot of opportunity for him to be a gadget type weapon, and the Patriots have no weapons. They need weapons. So utilizing these randos in certain positions will be what's going to help them excel. So I love that pick as well. And then Jaheim Bell, similar player. He's an actual tight end. That's their last pick. He's also an athletic specimen that they don't necessarily deem a tight end. So you got a lot of rando guys that are very, very athletic, skillful. They just need to figure out how to put these players in the right situation to succeed. And Drake May has to be the catalyst to do all that. So a lot of intrigue there. This could come crashing down. Drake May could be Mac Jones 2.0. But with the picks that they have in the latter rounds, I am absolutely intrigued. Do you guys have any thoughts on the Patriots draft?
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's like the blue collar team of the draft. Like, they did all the things they needed to do, but they have all these guys that are very confident in what they do. Like, everybody here on this list that the Patriots have drafted have proven something in one way or another. And just to add to that Baker thing, the quote, I think it ended with, "I make people in wheelchairs stand up."
That's what it is. I'm going to make people in wheelchairs stand up, bro. If that doesn't get you hyped, I don't know what will. I mean, that is a home run of a quote.
Yeah. I just wouldn't sleep on Tyquan Thornton just quite yet. Year 2, I think he's.
I am definitely not sleeping on him. Yeah. He's out of all those guys, out of Juju and all those guys. Yeah. Thornton's got the highest ceiling for sure.
Yeah, but these receivers that they got, Polk and Javon Baker, solid picks. But Tyquan Thornton's still there, in my opinion.
You take all that Tyquan Thornton stock, bro. I'll take all my Javon Baker stock as well.
Fair.
So that is my intrigue. My winner of the draft might be an obvious pick. It seems like they win every goddamn year, and there's a reason why, because they're constantly one of the best teams, constantly playing for a Super Bowl. It is the Philadelphia Eagles. What seems like drafts always just seem to fall in their lap. This is a win, even if you don't look at any other pick outside of the top two. We came into this draft season with maybe 3 guys that are jockeying for cornerback 1, right? Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and Terrion Arnold. You could say Nate Wiggins, but I think he was a little bit further down because of the slender size. How did the Eagles sit where they sat, not only take one of those guys, but get Cooper DeJean with the 40th overall pick in the 2nd round? I don't understand what the NFL is sleeping on. It could be a similar situation to Kyle Hamilton. When we didn't draft Kyle Hamilton, we decided to trade back, and now Kyle Hamilton's one of the best safeties in the league. Cooper DeJean can play nickel. He can play outside corner. He can play zone. He can play man. He can play safety. He can play free safety. He can play strong safety. He can play linebacker. This dude is intelligent as hell. What better spot to go than the Philadelphia Eagles that'll find a way to maximize his usage? He gets to play with Darius Slay and James Bradbury, and you have 2 young cornerbacks that are literally just going to plug and play and replace those guys. And you could even have those guys potentially move to safety now that they're slower and sucking more. So I don't understand how the Eagles continue to get away with the fact that they just sit and pick and players fall into their lap. So just those two picks alone, replacing your corner one, CB1 and CB2 with the first 2 picks is an absolute home run for me. Jalix Hunt is another edge that they got in the 3rd round that I absolutely love. A lot of physical tools to be a great disruptive pass rusher. They lost Hassan Reddick. They traded for Bryce Huff, but he is another guy that'll be a rotational edge rusher for them. And I think for me, a feel-good story is what's going to, put the cherry on top. Jeremiah Trotter in the 5th round, going back to Philadelphia, where his dad played, where his dad had a historic career. I think, if that's not a feel-good story that's going to, melt your heart, I don't know what is. So I'm intrigued. I'm excited for them. To me, I think they had one of the best wins in all of the draft. And I didn't even mention Johnny Wilson, who's a 6'7" wide receiver in the 6th round that just needs to play as a wide receiver 3 around A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That guy is a mismatch nightmare. You put him on the field with Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. Are you seriously in a world where you're going to let a 6'7" guy play one-on-one? Because you can't double team that guy. You got to double team the better players, right? So Johnny Wilson in the 6th round, to me, that guy's going to have a role next year for the Eagles. So absolute smash. I mean, A+, honestly. The Eagles won the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say so. They also do it seems like they align with what we do on mocks as well. Like our mocks and Eagles are very similar in that sense. So I think that they also get those players that we have highly ranked, and I don't know if other teams have them highly ranked. So we'll see if they actually do pan out. I mean, if you look at last year's draft as well, only outside of Jalen Carter, not a lot of players did see a lot of playing time. So it's just one of those things that, yes, they're high, but are they really going to account to playing time season 1? I don't know.
The good thing with the Eagles is they're so good that they don't need anybody to be
right.
They have rotation everywhere. They're building depth with the cornerbacks. They're building depth with the defensive line. So they don't ever put players in a position where you need to contribute day one. And that's why they're so successful. So to me, that is the benefit of how they draft, because they draft based on premium positions, even if they already have those positions filled. Like James Bradbury and Darius Slay, if not for the Philadelphia Eagles, even if they're old, another team may be like, you know what, we have 2 cornerbacks that maybe are at the tail end of their career. Maybe we need to take 1 cornerback in the draft, but to double up on at 22 and 40 and take the top 2 cornerbacks on my board, to me, that's an A+. Yes, other people may think differently, but I just think the way they continue to backfill the premium positions before the premium positions are gone, that's how you win football, folks. You don't wait for the premium positions to be gone and then fill it. So to me, the Eagles win the draft. Shove it. Who won your draft?
It's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, this one's easy for me. The Steelers draft pick.
Cue the Homer Simpson.
Cue it, man. Cue
the Homer Simpson gif.
But I think that in terms of needs were met. Needs exactly what they needed to do. We need to get a tackle and we need to get a center. And in the first 2 rounds, Troy Fontanu, offensive tackle from the Huskies, probably one of the best offensive tackles in the draft. Great technique, doesn't waste a lot of time in movement. So he's going to be a starter day one. I mean, that guy, he's a beast. And then they also get Zach Fraser, who's a center. He played wrestling. He's got a wrestling background. So, bending of the knees is not going to be a problem for this guy. And certainly great fundamentals as well. So a lot of these guys that you see that the Steelers drafted, they have high athleticism. Like they are getting people with high athleticism scores, like strong guys. And then just like this will to go out and do whatever it takes to win. And that brings me to my next guy, Roman Wilson, right? This guy, he's got the talent, but he's also there to block and run games, plays if needed too. He'll do whatever it takes to win. So all these players are scheme fit that I think the Steelers did a really good job of getting. And getting Roman Wilson in the 3rd round, a guy that can play slot after you lose Deontay Johnson, I think is a home run. And my favorite pick of the draft is Peyton Wilson from NC State. 4.43 speed. This guy will chase down any player on the field from one side to the other. I mean, he could be the best linebacker from all of this prospects with the way he plays. Incredible strength. His downside is that his injuries, right? So he doesn't have an ACL in one of his leg. And so he's had like 9 injuries in his history, but he has played the last 2 seasons without any injuries. So he's focused on his diet, all these things to kind of make himself be available to play on the field. So a lot of good things. The next picks are Mason McCormick, Logan Lee, Ryan Watts. Those are all guys that they got for depth positions, not necessarily they're, who knows, fifth round pick, 6th round pick, are they really going to be great? We don't know. But Ryan Watts, defensive back, 6'3", 40-inch vertical, certainly has the intent, like the I guess, what is it called? Not intangibles, but the height and the vertical ability to be a good cornerback. Whether or not he can keep up with the shorter guys, the slot receivers, that's going to be a question. They may move him in safety. But in terms of scheme fit, going out and doing what you wanted to do without making any trades and picking the best players available in that position, in that draft pick, I think they did a really stellar job, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it was it was very up par with the Steelers. I mean, with the Patriots in the way they drafted. They didn't go for like best player available. They kind of went for the guys that they always wanted. So you can't really knock on that. You always got to go get your guys. So I am going to talk to you about my winner. And I find outside of the Eagles, the Colts probably won this draft pretty drastically. It took until the 15th overall pick to choose a defensive player, and that was the Colts doing. They went with Latu. Obviously, there's not many people like that with athleticism and quickness and size, and you can win with both finesse and power. Like, these guys are rare as hell. So they said, you know what, screw this injury history. We can immediately have probably top 10 defensive end in the whole NFL through the draft. So they did it. They pulled the trigger. He wasn't the top ranked edge rusher. We ended up getting that guy. But it's hard to argue with this pick. Besides the injury history, cervical spine, that's what derailed Danielle Hunter for a whole year. But it sounds like, he's young. Maybe that won't be a problem for him. That's just a gamble they took, and they're willing to risk the possible injury history versus the level that he plays at. So good choice. You got to go with your guys, and they made their decision and went with them, even though Dallas Turner was right there. So it's just quickly going to boost this defense, which was ranked 28th in points allowed. So, less time to throw, less points allowed. It's just going to bolster this defense immediately. After trading down in the 2nd round, they added Texas wide receiver A.D. Mitchell. Can't knock on that pick either. It's, with all the off-field issues, whatever, fine. He's got diabetes. I don't know what that means. I don't know why that puts someone this low into the draft, but sounds like he's not really like taking care of his diabetes. That seems to be the problem. And, maybe he's a little bit of maybe he's lazy. If he's not willing to improve himself from those type of things, he may be in one of those categories as like guys that just don't care about their health. And, he's probably not the guy you're going to see in the weight room doing extra reps. It's that difference maker between an elite receiver and just somebody that makes it the NFL. Maybe that's the reason a lot of the teams didn't want him, but the Colts didn't care. Colts went in and got him, and they bolstered up one of the best wide receiver core in the NFL. Just like that. There's so many young guys already on this team. We already got Downs with his year that he had last year. We already have Pittman, who's probably one of the best receivers in all of AFC. And now you had this monster who was, like we discussed in this draft before, probably a better wide receiver overall than his counterpart who went before him in Worthy, right? So this is a totally full-fledged 6'2", 205 wide receiver with explosive ability, just as good as anybody else. And now Anthony Richardson has another quality target, not just a work in progress, not like Worthy where let's see if our philosophy works and he'll end up being great. This guy's going to be great immediately. So who are you going to guard on this offense either? I don't know. There's so many good offenses in the league now. And this one, which was already kind of competing to be one of the best because of Anthony Richardson, and is now over the top. Like now it's up there as far as the Texans go, as far as weapons go. So again, and then don't forget about the guy named Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. So it's just like there is just too many mouths to feed on this offense. So from a fantasy perspective, maybe not much damage immediately, but from Richardson's perspective, dude, we're going from 5th overall fantasy quarterback to maybe 2, maybe 3. Like this is a big news for fantasy purposes.
They needed, didn't mean to cut out. They needed somebody to take the top off, right? You have Michael Pittman, who is not the fastest guy. He's a good jump ball guy. He's a good possession guy. Josh Downs, he's quick. He's underneath, all that. A.D. Mitchell runs a 4.34 40-yard dash. He's going to open up the field for Anthony Richardson, who loves throwing that deep ball. I do not personally understand how he fell to 52 overall. We could look back and again, all of the rumors are around, like you said, his health, but also like in college, there were certain routes where he wasn't going 100% when he knew he wasn't going to be the primary target. He wasn't running his routes at 100%. They even had Xavier Worthy do that though. And Xavier Worthy's stock did not fall at all. So I don't think it's the effort. It has to be something with the medicals or the diabetes or something along those lines, because dude, for that size, that speed, that combination and how he produced in college, I don't understand the fall or the drop off. So for the Colts to get him at 52 overall is an absolute steal.
What sticks out from everything I read was the fact that, quote, uncoachable. So I don't know what that means. That doesn't sound very medical, but I don't know. Nobody knows, really. Nobody knows. And that just kind of got thrown around during the draft time. And it was enough for some teams to be scared, but the Colts did not care. Next up, just a couple of other things why this team made such a drastic change and why I think they are one of the better teams now because of the draft. 4th round pick, they got Bartolini, which again, they already had, what's his name? Goncalves. They already added him in the draft, and then they immediately went and got Anthony Gold as a target for him too. So 2 offensive linemen, bolster up the inside, more protection for Anthony Richardson to go outside. It's just like they fixed it. They fixed the problems. And protecting your quarterback from the inside out. And this is a fast quarterback, so you don't really have to worry about tackles as much as you do for like a more of a standalone quarterback. So they said, let's bolster up the inside. We'll see what we got with the outside. Let's add more weapons. We already have one of the best running backs in the league. This offense just improved drastically. So all in all, solid A draft. General manager did amazing through all of this. But my main thing was, knowing you have an elite quarterback, giving him more tools, and reloading a defense that was ranked 28th in points allowed last year. So they did everything. They did everything that you would want a team to do, kind of like the Chargers, kind of like the Eagles, kind of like the Patriots, and kind of like the Steelers. So solid A draft. I think this is hands down an A draft.
Yeah. The thing the Colts have shown to be able to do really well in the past is develop offensive linemen that aren't drafted in the first round. So you look at their offensive line right now, and my goodness, I guess I didn't realize how good they are. And keep in mind, I'm basing this off of PFF grades, but take it with a grain of salt. You have your left tackle, Bernard Ryman, who is 7th out of 81st qualifying left tackles in PFF grade, right? So you have your tackle locked down. And then on the other end, you have Braden Smith, who is 6th qualifying of 81st tackles. So your bookend tackles are set for your future quarterback of Anthony Richardson. So now you already have Quentin Nelson. You already know he needs no introduction. So he's already a potential Hall of Famer. And your center right now is Ryan Kelly, who is a first-round pick from 2016, and he is 8th in qualifying center. So the only offensive spot that they were missing was right guard. And for right guard, they got Matt Gonzalez and Tanner Bortolini, both of who can play the interior offensive line. So you filled the only gap in your offensive line hole that you were seeking, and you added another weapon for a receiving core that I already forgot about. Alex Pierce, I think he's going to kind of be a afterthought moving forward anyways, moving down on the depth chart. But now you have Josh Downs or A.D. Mitchell as potentially your wide receiver 3. I mean, this offense is scary. Read options with a read option where you can also throw the football. My goodness. I mean, I just don't know how defenses are going to stop them.
Yeah. And regarding A.D. Mitchell, right? Like, if you can say all these things off field or whatever, but there's so much competition with the receivers that it will hopefully bring the best out in him. You know, we've seen what he can do. You just throw the ball to him, he can catch it. And he's got great route running abilities as well. Hopefully with the competition, with the Pittman, Downs, Alec Pierce that they already have, that will just bring out the best in A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah, man. Big home run win for the Colts. That is all we have. Winners, losers, most intriguing draft. So much to unpack. My goodness, it was such a long time to get here and so much analyzing and all this crap. And so we can finally move forward. The draft is over, and now it's time to really dig deep into the fantasy season, see how these, 6th, 7th round running backs and receivers that got drafted, where they're going to fit in, how they're going to make an impact in year one. And so we have so much fantasy football stuff to break down moving forward. Thank you guys so much for watching another episode. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It helps spread the word. You can listen to us on any place you get your podcast platform, socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at The Only Playbook. I am Sweetcard. That is Showgood. That is your show. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Have a fantastic